I caught my wife sitting on another man's lap in his corner office, phone in my hand recording every second of it. My name is James Morrison, and I'm 35 years old. I thought I had it all figured out. Solid career as a project manager, 8-year marriage to Vanessa, and my 6-year-old daughter Clarice, who was the light of my life. Never imagined I'd be that guy standing in a doorway watching his world implode. People ask how I stayed so calm, how I didn't explode right then. Truth is, I was furious, absolutely raging. But I'd learned long ago that anger without strategy is just noise, and I wasn't interested in making noise. I was interested in making her pay. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with everything, you know that feeling, that cold, sharp clarity telling you exactly what needs to happen next. This is how I turned that betrayal into the sweetest justice I've ever tasted. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. It was a Thursday afternoon when my world ended. I'd finished a site inspection early, some foundation work that went smoother than expected, and I was feeling good, like everything in my life was clicking along just fine. I decided to surprise Vanessa at her office, bring her favorite coffee, maybe steal her away for a quick lunch. I was being a thoughtful husband. The universe has a sick sense of humor. I walked into that 15th floor office suite carrying 2 lattes, nodding at the receptionist who smiled and waved me through. Vanessa had told me 100 times that Fernando's office was the corner one with the glass walls. He liked transparency, she'd said. Yeah, transparent. That's exactly what I got. The blinds were half closed, but not enough, not nearly enough. Through the gap, I saw them. Vanessa, in her black pencil skirt and blue blouse, sitting sideways on Fernando's lap in his executive chair. His hand was on her waist, her hand was on his shoulder. They were laughing, this intimate, familiar laugh that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Not a peck, a real kiss, the kind that said this wasn't the first time, the kind that said they belonged to each other. I didn't storm in screaming, didn't drop the coffees, though my hands wanted to crush them. I set them down carefully on the receptionist's desk, pulled out my phone, and started recording. Got 15 seconds of crystal clear footage. The kiss, the touching, her throwing her head back, laughing at something he whispered. Then I took 3 photos, making sure the angle caught both their faces. Then I opened the door and walked in. "Hey, honey," I said, my voice flat and cold as January pavement. "Interesting meeting." Vanessa practically launched herself off Fernando's lap, her face going from flushed to pale in half a second. "James, what are you? I didn't know you were—" "Yeah, I can see that." I held up my phone, showing her the screen. "Got some great shots, though. Really captures the professional relationship you two have." Fernando stood up, straightening his tie like that would somehow restore his dignity. He was maybe 40, with graying temples and the kind of practiced confidence that comes from never being told no. "Mr. Morrison, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Shut up, Fernando." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "I'm not talking to you yet. Vanessa, how long?" "James, please, let me explain." "How long?" She wrapped her arms around herself, and I saw the calculation in her eyes, trying to figure out what lie might work, what spin might soften this. 3 months, she finally whispered. "But it's not what you think." 3 months. I laughed, and it came out harsh and ugly. 3 months of you coming home to our daughter, sitting at our dinner table, sleeping in our bed and playing devoted wife. 3 months of lying to my face every single day. "It just happened, James. We didn't mean for—" "Stop." I held up my hand. "Don't you dare tell me it just happened. You made a choice. Every single day for 3 months, you chose this." I gestured at Fernando, who had the sense to look uncomfortable. "You chose him over our family." Fernando cleared his throat. "Look, James, can I call you James? This is clearly an emotional situation. Why don't we all take a breath and—" "I told you to shut up." I turned to him fully now, and I felt something cold and sharp settle into my chest. "You think you're going to smooth talk your way out of this? You think I'm going to take a breath while you stand there, still smelling like my wife's perfume?" His jaw tightened. "I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate you screwing my wife in your office during business hours, Fernando. But here we are." I smiled, and I knew it didn't reach my eyes. Tell me something. Does your wife know about your extracurricular activities? Because Vanessa mentioned you're married. Donna, right? Been together 15 years? His face went white. You leave my wife out of this. Oh, that's rich. That's really rich coming from you. I laughed again, bitter and mean. Here's what's going to happen. I'm walking out of here. Vanessa, you're going to stay late tonight. Very late. Because you're not coming home. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever. I'm going to pack your things and leave them wherever you want. But you're not setting foot in my house again. James, please, Clarice. Don't you say her name. My voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare use our daughter as leverage. You should have thought about her before you decided to throw our family away. I turned and walked out, leaving Vanessa sobbing and Fernando frozen behind his desk. My hands didn't shake until I got to my car. Then I sat there for 5 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, letting the rage wash through me until I could think clearly again. Then I started the engine and drove straight to my lawyer's office. I'd known Jerry Parker since college. We'd played on the same intramural basketball team, stayed friends through the years even as our careers took us in different directions. He'd built a reputation as one of the toughest divorce attorneys in the state, the kind of lawyer other lawyers warned their clients about. When I walked into his office late that Thursday afternoon, he took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. He just pulled out a bottle of bourbon from his desk drawer and poured 2 glasses. "Who is it?" he asked, settling into his chair. "Vanessa, her boss. 3 months." I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos and video. Jerry watched the footage, his jaw tightening. His expression went from concern to something darker, professional calculation mixed with genuine anger. "Jesus, James, I'm sorry, man. Don't be sorry. Help me destroy her." He set down his glass and leaned forward. "With this evidence, we can crush her in court. But I need to know exactly what you want. Asset division? Custody? What's the endgame here?" "Everything." I downed half the bourbon in one swallow. "I want full custody of Clarice. I want the house. I want her to walk away with the absolute minimum the law allows. I want her to feel every single consequence of what she did. The affair evidence helps with custody, especially in front of the right judge, but it's stronger if we can prove it affected her parenting. Do you have anything else? Times she prioritized the affair over your daughter?" I thought back over the past 3 months, and suddenly all those little moments I'd dismissed or rationalized came flooding back with crystal clarity. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Yeah, I can document plenty. Late nights, she said, were work dinners. Must have been a dozen of them. There was a weekend team-building retreat that lasted 3 days. I had Clarice the whole time, and Vanessa barely even called to check in. What else? She's been distracted, distant with Clarice. Our daughter would try to show her something from school, and Vanessa would just not be there. Like her mind was somewhere else." My hands clenched around the glass. She was thinking about him. While our kid was trying to get her attention, Vanessa was thinking about him. Jerry started taking notes. "Her teacher notice anything?" "Clarice has been quieter lately, more anxious. The teacher mentioned it at the last parent conference, but Vanessa brushed it off as normal 6-year-old stuff. Over the next 2 hours, we built a strategy that felt like constructing a siege engine. Jerry would file first thing Friday morning, requesting an emergency custody hearing based on Vanessa's infidelity and what we'd argue was an unstable home situation. We'd subpoena her work emails and text messages, every communication between her and Fernando, every lie she'd told to cover the affair. We'd depose Fernando himself and make him admit everything under oath. "He'll lawyer up the second he knows about the deposition," Jerry said. "But that doesn't matter. We're going to make this public, make it messy. Make sure everyone involved understands exactly what's at stake." Good. I felt that cold satisfaction settling deeper into my chest. "One more thing, James, and this is crucial." Jerry looked at me hard. "Don't contact her. Don't engage. Don't give her anything she can use against you. You're the wronged party here. Let's keep it that way. Document everything, every text, every call, every time she tries to contact you. Screenshot it, save it, send it to me. She's going to try to come home tonight. Change the locks. Right now, today, before she can get there." He stood up. "Go straight to the hardware store. Document everything you do. If she shows up and you've changed the locks, record it. If she calls, don't answer, but save the voicemails. Everything she does from this point forward goes into our case file. 20 minutes later, I was at a hardware store picking out new deadbolts and door handles. The clerk asked if I needed help installing them, and I almost laughed. No, I wanted to say. I need to do this myself. I need to physically lock her out of my life. I spent the next hour on my knees installing those locks, each turn of the screwdriver feeling like I was sealing something shut. Then I went through the house and packed Vanessa's things: clothes, toiletries, the framed photo of her and her mother, her jewelry box. Every item felt like evidence of a life that was already over. I carried the boxes and suitcases out to the garage and stacked them neatly by the side door. When I picked up Clarice from after-school care that evening, she was showing me a drawing she'd made, our family as stick figures holding hands. My chest tightened. "Where's Mommy?" she asked as we drove home. "Is she working late again?" "Mommy's going to be staying somewhere else for a little while," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. "But you're going to stay here with me, okay? Everything's going to be okay." She looked at me with those big, worried eyes that broke my heart. "Did you and Mommy have a fight?" "Yes, sweetheart, we did. But it's not your fault, okay? This is a grown-up problem, and Daddy's going to handle it." That night, after I'd tucked Clarice into bed and read her 2 extra stories because she seemed anxious, my phone started buzzing. Vanessa called once. Twice. By the time I stopped counting, she'd called 14 times. I didn't answer a single one. Then the texts started rolling in. "James, please, we need to talk. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. Please just let me explain. You can't just shut me out like this. This is my house too. You're being cruel and vindictive. I deserve a chance to talk to my daughter. Fine, don't answer. But you can't do this." 23 messages in total, ranging from apologetic to angry to desperate. I screenshot every single one and forwarded them to Jerry without reading most of them twice. At 10:47 p.m., I heard a car pull into the driveway. Then fists pounding on the front door. James, please, let me in. We need to talk." I pulled out my phone and started recording, then walked to the door. I didn't open it. "Your things are in the garage," I said, my voice carrying through the wood. "The code is the same. Take them and leave." "I'm not leaving. This is my house too. You can't lock me out." "Not anymore. My lawyer filed the paperwork this morning. You're no longer welcome here." "You can't keep me from my daughter." "I'm not keeping you from her, but you're not staying under my roof. You made your choice, Vanessa. Now live with it." She cried. She begged. She threatened to call the police, to break a window, to camp out on the lawn until I let her in. I recorded all of it, every word, every sob, every desperate promise that she'd change, that we could work through this. At 11:30 p.m., I heard the garage door open, heard her loading boxes into her car. Then she peeled out of the driveway, tires squealing on the pavement. I sent the recording to Jerry, poured myself another bourbon, and sat in the dark living room, staring at nothing. 6 hours. That's how long it had taken for my entire life to explode. Friday morning, I was making Clarice breakfast when my phone rang. Jerry. "Vanessa's been served," he said without preamble. "She's already retained counsel, Brenton Adams. He's good, but we have the evidence. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "What's next?" "Emergency custody hearing is scheduled for next week. In the meantime, document everything. Keep Clarice's routine as normal as possible. And James, this is going to get ugly." He wasn't wrong. Over the next few days, Vanessa's texts escalated from apologetic to accusatory. "You're being cruel. You're overreacting. You're using our daughter as a weapon." It was a moment of weakness, James. One mistake. You're throwing away our family over one mistake. I screenshot every single message and sent them to Jerry. I didn't respond to any of them. Then on Saturday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Lorna Kim, Vanessa's mother, standing on my porch with her purse clutched tight. "James," she said, her voice soft and pleading. "Can we talk?" I stayed in the doorway, keeping her outside. "I'm sorry, Lorna, but I'm not discussing this with you." "James, she's my daughter. She made a mistake, but she loves you. She loved Fernando enough to risk everything we had. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Everyone deserves a second chance. Not everyone. Not this time." I started to close the door, then paused. "Tell her to communicate through her lawyer." "That's the only way I'm talking to her now." Lorna's face crumpled, but I closed the door anyway. I felt a pang of guilt. Lorna had always been kind to me, always welcomed me into the family. But this wasn't her fight. and I wasn't going to let Vanessa use her mother as a messenger. That afternoon, I made a decision. If Vanessa wanted consequences, I'd make sure everyone got them. I found Donna Hubert's number through social media. She had a LinkedIn profile for her interior design business. Professional headshot, warm smile, no idea her husband was a lying piece of garbage. My heart was pounding when I called. "Hello?" She sounded warm, friendly. "Mrs. Hubert? My name is James Morrison. I don't know if you know who I am, but I think we need to talk about your husband." There was a long pause. "What about Fernando?" "He's been having an affair with my wife, Vanessa. It's been going on for 3 months. I caught them together in his office last week." The silence that followed was deafening. "Mrs. Hubert, how do I know you're telling the truth?" Her voice had gone cold, flat. "I have photos, video. I can send them to you if you want, but I'm warning you, they're not easy to look at." Another pause. "Then, send them." I sent the evidence. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. "You son of a bitch," she hissed, but she wasn't talking to me. "That son of a bitch, how could he—" Her voice broke. "We have 2 kids, 2 teenage kids, and he's—" "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "I just thought you deserved to know." "Thank you." She sounded like she was crying. "Thank you for telling me." She hung up. 2 days later, on Sunday, Jerry called with news. Fernando's been put on administrative leave from his job pending an investigation. Donna filed for divorce and reported the affair to the company's HR department. I felt something settle in my chest. Cold, sharp satisfaction. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Vanessa. "What did you do?" she screamed the second I answered. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I told the truth. "That's all. Fernando's been suspended. His wife is divorcing him. His career is over." "Good." I felt nothing but ice. "He made his choices. Now he's living with them, just like you are." "You're destroying people's lives, James." "No, Vanessa, you did that. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible." She hung up on me. I smiled. Thursday morning the following week, I walked into the courthouse with Jerry beside me, briefcase in hand. My heart was hammering, but I kept my face neutral, calm. This was it, the first real battle. Vanessa was already there with Brenton Adams sitting at the defense table. She'd dressed for the part, conservative navy dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like the picture of a devoted mother who'd made one terrible mistake. I wanted to laugh, or scream, maybe both. Judge Remy Sands entered, and we all stood. She was maybe 50, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She settled behind the bench and gestured for us to sit. "This is an emergency hearing regarding temporary custody in the matter of Morrison versus Morrison," she said, looking between Vanessa and me. "Mr. Parker, you filed the motion. Let's hear what you have." Jerry stood, and I felt something loosen in my chest. This was his arena. "Your Honor, my client discovered his wife engaged in an extramarital affair with her supervisor, Fernando Hubert, that lasted a minimum of 3 months. The affair was conducted during work hours, often at the expense of Mrs. Morrison's parental duties." He pulled out the photos, the video, passed copies to the judge. "This evidence was obtained when Mr. Morrison visited his wife's workplace and witnessed the affair firsthand." Judge Sands studied the images, her expression unreadable. Jerry continued. "Over the course of this affair, Mrs. Morrison frequently worked late nights, or claimed to, missing school events, parent-teacher conferences, bedtime routines. She prioritized her relationship with Mr. Hubert over her daughter's well-being. We have testimony from Clarice's teacher, Ms. Olivia Bradford, who noted that the child seemed increasingly anxious and withdrawn over the past several months." He slid another document across. "When Mr. Morrison discovered the affair, he immediately took steps to provide stability for his daughter. He maintained her routine, kept her in her school and activities, provided a consistent home environment. Mrs. Morrison, meanwhile, has demonstrated a pattern of deception and a willingness to prioritize her personal desires over her family's welfare." Brenton stood, smoothing his tie. "Your Honor, with all due respect, an affair is a private matter between adults. It's painful, yes, but it shouldn't automatically affect custody arrangements. Mrs. Morrison loves her daughter deeply and has been a devoted mother for 6 years. One mistake, one lapse in judgment, shouldn't result in losing her child." "One mistake?" I couldn't help it. The words came out hard and sharp. Jerry put a hand on my arm, but I was already pulling back. Judge Sands looked at me, then at Brenton. Mr. Adams, while I appreciate your position, I have to disagree. The affair itself might be a private matter, but the pattern of behavior it represents is absolutely relevant to this child's welfare. She looked down at the documents in front of her. Mrs. Morrison, you put your daughter in a position where her home life became unstable due to your choices. You were distracted, absent, prioritizing an illicit relationship over your parental responsibilities. Your daughter's teacher noticed. Your daughter noticed. She turned to me. Mr. Morrison, on the other hand, has demonstrated stability and appropriate parenting during this crisis. My throat tightened. I hadn't expected her to be so direct. I'm granting temporary full custody to Mr. Morrison, Judge Sands said. Mrs. Morrison will have supervised visitation, 2 hours every Saturday, supervised by a court-appointed monitor. We'll revisit this arrangement at the full custody hearing in 60 days. Vanessa's face crumpled. Your Honor, please. My decision is made, Mrs. Morrison. If you want to change it, I suggest you spend the next 60 days demonstrating that you can prioritize your daughter's needs over your own. The gavel came down. I sat there for a second, letting it sink in. I'd won. Temporary, sure, but I'd won. Jerry squeezed my shoulder. Good start, he murmured. I stood, gathered my things, and walked toward the door. Vanessa was crying at the defense table, Brenton leaning close trying to console her. I didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun hit my face, and I stopped on the steps, just breathing. For the first time in 2 weeks, my chest didn't feel like it was clamped in a vice. You okay? Jerry asked. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I really am. Clarice was mine. At least for now, she was safe, stable, with me. Everything else could wait. 3 weeks after the custody hearing, Jerry called with an update. The investigation wrapped up, he said. You're going to want to hear this. I was at home, watching Clarice color at the kitchen table. What'd they find? Everything. HR pulled security footage, email records, expense reports, the whole 9 yards. Turns out, Vanessa and Fernando were using company time and resources for their affair pretty extensively. I felt that cold satisfaction settle in my chest again. How extensively? Long lunches at hotels, expense reports for client meetings that were actually hotel rooms, even a weekend conference trip they took together. Remember that marketing conference in April? I did. Vanessa had been gone 3 days. I'd stayed home with Clarice, ordered pizza, watched movies. Yeah, they went together, shared a room, billed it all to the company. My jaw tightened. While I was home with our daughter. Exactly. I've already subpoenaed all of it for the divorce proceedings. This is going to bury her in court. The verdict came down on a Tuesday afternoon. Fernando was terminated. Violation of company policy regarding workplace relationships, misuse of company funds, the whole list. Vanessa got a formal reprimand, a transfer to a different department, and a pay cut. Not fired, but close enough. Jerry sent me the documentation. I read through it twice, then poured myself a bourbon. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Vanessa. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. I lost everything, James. Her voice was thick with tears. My job, my reputation, Fernando, everything. You lost it all the moment you sat on his lap, I said. My voice came out flat, emotionless. This is just the consequences catching up. I have nothing left. You have Clarice. If you can prove you're a fit parent, you'll have supervised visitation. That's more than you deserve. Silence. Then, barely a whisper. I hate you. I rubbed my eyes, suddenly tired. Yeah, Vanessa. I'm starting not to care. I hung up. Funny thing about betrayal. There's this moment after the initial shock wears off, after the anger stops burning quite so hot, when you realize the weight you'd been carrying wasn't just the marriage. It was the pretending, the believing in something that wasn't real. As the weeks passed, I started feeling lighter. Clarice adjusted to the new normal faster than I expected. She missed her mother, asked about Vanessa sometimes, wondered why Mommy cried so much during their Saturday visits, but she was happy. Stable. Her teacher called to tell me Clarice seemed like a different kid, more focused, more engaged, smiling again. Whatever you're doing, Ms. Bradford said, keep doing it. I hired Amory Taylor to help with after-school care. She was maybe 30, warm and professional, and Clarice took to her immediately. Between Mary handling the afternoon routine and me managing mornings and evenings, we found our rhythm. And then there was Misty. Misty Roberts and I had known each other for years. Same social circles, mutual friends, nothing romantic. She worked as a graphic designer, had gone through her own divorce 3 years back. When she reached out after hearing about Vanessa, it was just coffee, just conversation with someone who understood what I was going through. But slowly, carefully, it became something more. "I'm not ready for anything serious," I told her one evening over dinner at a quiet Italian place downtown. Clarice was home with Amory, and I'd actually remembered how to relax. "I don't know when I will be." Misty smiled, this easy, genuine smile that made something in my chest unclench. "I know, neither am I. But maybe we can figure it out together." Life was good. Better than good, actually. I was genuinely happy in a way I hadn't been in years. Maybe longer than that, if I was honest. 2 months after the custody hearing, I was at that same Italian restaurant with Misty, laughing at something she'd said about a ridiculous client request, when my phone buzzed. Jerry Parker. I almost sent it to voicemail, but Jerry didn't usually call this late unless it was important. "Sorry," I said to Misty. "Give me 1 second," I answered. "Jerry? What's up?" "James, we need to talk." His voice had that tight edge again. Vanessa's lawyer filed a motion to revisit custody. Emergency hearing scheduled for next week. The restaurant noise faded to background static. "What? On what grounds?" "They're claiming you're introducing unstable relationships into Clarice's life too soon after the separation. They have photos of you and Misty together." I looked across the table at Misty, who was watching me with concern. Everything had been going so well. Of course, it couldn't last. "This is because of Misty." I kept my voice low, but my grip on the phone tightened hard enough that my knuckles went white. "They have photos of you two together," Jerry said. "Argument is that you're exposing your daughter to a new romantic partner too soon after the separation." I stood up from the table, walking toward the restaurant's entrance. Misty watched me go, concern written all over her face. "That's insane. Misty and I have been friends for years. Clarice loves her." "I know, and we'll argue that. But James, Brenton's good at spinning narratives. He's going to paint you as reckless, and Vanessa as the stable parent who made one mistake and has been working to improve herself." That cold weight settled back in my chest, the same feeling I'd had standing outside Fernando's office. "When's the hearing?" "Next Wednesday. I'll send you the details. And James, don't panic. We have the evidence. We have the truth." I hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at nothing. The truth. Right. Because that had mattered so much when Vanessa was lying to my face for 3 months. Wednesday afternoon, 1 week later. The custody revision hearing was a nightmare. Brenton Adams stood before Judge Sands, looking every bit the compassionate advocate. "Your Honor, Mrs. Morrison has undergone extensive therapy since the separation. She's completed parenting classes, maintained steady employment despite her transfer, and has shown genuine remorse and a commitment to growth." I watched Vanessa sit there in another conservative dress, tissues clutched in her hand, playing the reformed sinner perfectly. "Meanwhile," Brenton continued, "Mr. Morrison has jumped into a new romantic relationship while his daughter is still adjusting to her parents' separation. He's introduced this new partner into Clarice's life, exposing her to instability during an already traumatic time." My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would crack. "Your Honor, Mr. Morrison has shown the same lack of judgment his wife displayed." Brenton turned, gesturing toward me like I was the one who'd been caught in someone else's lap. "He's prioritizing his personal happiness over his daughter's stability." Judge Sands looked troubled. She glanced down at the motion, then back up at Jerry. "Mr. Parker, do you have evidence that Mr. Morrison's relationship is harmful to the child?" Jerry stood, and I heard that sharp edge in his voice. "Your Honor, Mr. Morrison's friendship with Ms. Roberts predates the separation by years. She's been a positive, stable presence in Clarice's life. This is a transparent attempt to distract from Mrs. Morrison's ongoing pattern of poor judgment. Mrs. Morrison has shown significant improvement," Brenton interrupted smoothly. "She's completed therapy. She's maintained steady employment. She's demonstrated genuine remorse and personal growth. Meanwhile, Mr. Morrison is gallivanting around town with a new girlfriend while his daughter watches her father replace her mother." I wanted to stand up, wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that I'd been careful, that Clarice barely even knew Misty and I were dating. Wanted to ask how the hell Vanessa got to play the victim when she was the one who destroyed our family. Jerry's hand landed on my arm, firm and warning. Stay seated. Stay quiet. I stayed seated. But God, it took everything I had. Judge Sands leaned back, her expression unreadable. I'm going to take this under advisement. I'll issue a ruling by the end of the week. Your Honor, Jerry started. My decision is made, Mr. Parker. We're adjourned. The gavel came down. I walked out of that courtroom feeling sick. Vanessa had turned this around. She'd made herself the victim, made me the reckless one, and Judge Sands had actually looked troubled. Like maybe, just maybe, Brenton's argument had landed. James, Jerry caught up to me in the hallway. Don't spiral. We knew they'd try something like this. She looked convinced, I said flatly. Sands looked like she was buying it. She's being thorough. That's her job. Jerry's voice was steady, but I could hear the edge underneath. We have 3 days. Let me work. I nodded, but I didn't believe him. I drove home in silence, picked up Clarice from Amory's, and spent the evening going through the motions. Dinner, homework, bath time, bedtime stories. The whole time, all I could think was, what if Vanessa actually wins this? What if all my evidence, all my planning, all my careful documentation, what if none of it mattered because I dared to be happy again? Saturday afternoon, 3 days after the custody revision hearing, I was on the living room floor with Clarice, helping her build a Lego castle, when my phone rang. Jerry's name lit up the screen. Hey, I said, stepping into the kitchen. What's up? James, we caught a break. A big one. Something in his voice made my pulse kick up. What kind of break? Remember how we subpoenaed Vanessa's phone records and emails? Our forensic guy finally cracked her backed-up data. You're going to want to sit down for this. I sat at the kitchen table, my heart hammering. I'm sitting. Give me a second. I'm sending you the file now. My phone buzzed. I opened the attachment, and there it was, pages and pages of text messages between Vanessa and Fernando. But the timestamps didn't say 3 months ago. They said 6 months. Oh my God, I whispered. Keep reading, Jerry said. I scrolled through message after message. The flirting, the planning, the sneaking around. All of it starting half a year before I'd walked into that office. She'd lied about the timeline. She'd lied about everything. Then I hit the messages that made my blood run cold. Vanessa, I moved another 3K today. He still hasn't noticed. Fernando, good. You need to protect yourself. When he finds out, you'll need resources. Vanessa, I talked to that lawyer you recommended. She says as long as I document his hours and my primary caretaking, I should get majority custody. Fernando, and the house? Vanessa, she thinks I have a strong case, especially if I can prove he's been emotionally distant. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at those words. James? Jerry's voice pulled me back. You still there? She was planning this. My voice came out flat, dead. She was planning to leave me. Yeah, she was. She wasn't caught in a moment of weakness. She was setting me up. That's exactly what she was doing, Jerry said. She was strategizing her exit, securing her financial position, lining up her next relationship. The only thing that derailed her plan was you walking in that day. I scrolled further, my hands shaking. More transfers, more planning, more lies. How much did she move? I asked. $47,000 over 4 months. Small enough amounts that you wouldn't notice. Couple hundred here, 1,000 there, all transferred to an account she opened without telling you. $47,000. Money I'd earned, money we'd saved together, money that should have been for Clarice's college or our future. And Vanessa had stolen it, piece by piece, while pretending to be my wife. Can we get it back? Every penny. Jerry's voice turned sharp, satisfied. And James, this changes everything. Judge Sands is going to see this for what it is. Fraud, deception, and a complete lack of credibility. I'm filing an emergency motion tomorrow morning. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at the messages on my screen, and felt something cold and furious settle deep in my chest. Vanessa hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a calculated decision to destroy me, to take my money, to take my daughter, and to walk away like she was the victim. Well, guess what? She just handed me the ammunition to destroy her right back. 2 weeks later, over the next 14 days, Jerry worked like a man possessed. He documented every single transfer, every text message, every lie Vanessa had told. He proved the affair had lasted twice as long as she'd admitted. He found witnesses, a bartender who remembered seeing Vanessa and Fernando together at a hotel bar 4 months before my discovery. a server who'd waited on them at a romantic restaurant, even security footage from a parking garage showing them leaving together. Every piece of evidence built the same picture. This wasn't an affair that just happened. This was premeditated betrayal. I helped where I could, but mostly I focused on Clarice. Kept her routine normal, kept her happy, made sure she knew that no matter what happened, Daddy loved her and everything was going to be okay. Because it was going to be okay. I could feel it now. Morning of the final hearing. I stood outside the courthouse with Jerry, straightening my tie. "You ready?" he asked. I looked up at the building where my marriage would officially end, where Vanessa's lies would finally catch up to her, where I'd either walk away with everything or lose it all. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." We walked up the steps together. I felt like a man holding a winning hand. The courtroom felt smaller than I remembered. Vanessa was already there when Jerry and I walked in, sitting next to Brenton at the defendant's table. She kept glancing over at me, trying to read my face, trying to gauge what I was thinking. I gave her nothing, just stared straight ahead, calm and cold. Judge Sands entered, and we all stood. "Please be seated," she said, settling behind the bench. "We're here for final determination of custody and asset division in the matter of Morrison versus Morrison." She looked at Jerry. "Mr. Parker, I understand you have new evidence to present?" "Yes, Your Honor." Jerry stood, and I watched Vanessa's face go pale. She knew. Somehow, she already knew this wasn't going to go her way. Jerry laid it all out. Every text message between Vanessa and Fernando, going back 6 months, twice as long as she'd admitted. Every transfer of money from our joint account to her secret account. Every calculation, every lie, every deliberate step she'd taken to set me up for the fall while she walked away clean. He didn't just present evidence, he painted a picture of a woman who hadn't made a mistake, who hadn't been swept away by passion or temptation, a woman who'd planned, strategized, and executed a calculated betrayal while sleeping in my bed and eating at my table. Brenton tried to object. "Your Honor, the manner in which this evidence was obtained is perfectly legal," Jerry cut him off. "These are court-ordered subpoenas of my client's own marital accounts and his wife's company-issued devices. Everything here was obtained through proper legal channels." "But the context," Brenton tried again. "The context," Jerry said, his voice sharp as a blade, "is that Mrs. Morrison has demonstrated a pattern of deception, fraud, and manipulation that extends far beyond the affair. She stole nearly $50,000 from her husband over 4 months. She lied about the timeline of her infidelity, and she attempted to manipulate these very proceedings by painting herself as a reformed individual while continuing to hide assets and deceive this court." He turned to Judge Sands. "Your Honor, Mrs. Morrison is not a fit parent, and she is absolutely not entitled to favorable asset division given her extensive financial misconduct." The courtroom was silent. Judge Sands looked at Vanessa. "Mrs. Morrison, is any of this true?" Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it. Her hands were shaking. Then she started to cry. "I was scared," she whispered. "I thought if James found out, I'd lose everything, So you decided to steal from him first?" Judge Sands' voice was sharp, cutting. "To hide assets and plan your escape while continuing to live in his home, benefit from his income, and pretend to be his wife?" "I made mistakes." "No, Mrs. Morrison." Judge Sands leaned forward. "You made choices. Calculated, deliberate choices to defraud your husband and manipulate this court." She turned to me, and her expression softened. "Mr. Morrison, I apologize that these proceedings have taken as long as they have. It's clear to me that you've been the victim of extensive deception and financial misconduct." Then she delivered the ruling. "I'm awarding full sole custody to Mr. Morrison with supervised visitation for Mrs. Morrison pending completion of a psychological evaluation. Mrs. Morrison will return all funds taken from the marital accounts, plus interest. Asset division will be 70-30 in favor of Mr. Morrison, given the financial misconduct. Mr. Morrison will retain the marital home and primary custody of the minor child, Clarice." Vanessa's face went white. "Your Honor, please. My decision is final. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down. I stood up, and I swear I felt 10 pounds lighter. Vanessa stumbled out of the courtroom behind me, Brenton trying to comfort her, but there was nothing he could say. She'd lost. Completely. In the hallway, she grabbed my arm. "James, please. Can we talk?" I turned to look at her. This woman I'd loved, This woman I'd trusted with everything, my home, my daughter, my future. There's nothing left to say, Vanessa. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I screwed up, but please, you didn't screw up. I pulled my arm away. You chose this. Every step of the way, you chose this. You wanted out? You wanted Fernando? You wanted to protect yourself at my expense? I smiled, cold and bitter. Congratulations. You got exactly what you deserved. I love you, she whispered. I still love you. No, you don't. You love what I represented. Stability, security, a good life. But you didn't love me enough to be faithful. You didn't love me enough to be honest. And you definitely didn't love me enough to put our daughter first. I started to walk away, then turned back. Fernando lost his job, by the way, and his wife. Heard he's working as a consultant now, making about half what he used to. Hope he was worth it. I left her standing there and walked out into the sunlight. For the first time in months, I felt free. 6 months after the final hearing, my life looked completely different. Clarice was thriving. Her grades were up, straight A's on her last report card. She'd made new friends at school, kids whose parents actually showed up to events and gave a damn. And she seemed happier than I'd seen her in years. Really happy, not the forced smile she'd worn during those last months of Vanessa's affair. Vanessa had her supervised visitation every other weekend, court-ordered, monitored by a social worker. But every time I picked Clarice up on Sunday afternoon, I could see the relief in my daughter's eyes as we drove away. Mommy cries a lot, she told me one evening while I was making dinner. I set down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. Does she? Yeah, she says she misses us. Misses you. Clarice looked at me with those big, serious eyes. Are you ever going to be together again? I crouched down so we were eye level. No, sweetheart. I know that's hard to hear, but sometimes grown-ups make choices that mean things can't go back to the way they were. She nodded slowly, processing. Okay? You okay? Yeah. She hugged me. I like it better here anyway. Out of the mouths of babes, right? Misty and I were taking things slow, but it was working. She understood what I'd been through. Hell, she'd lived her own version of it 3 years earlier. She never pushed, never demanded more than I could give. And Clarice adored her. That was enough for now. I'd heard through the grapevine what happened to Vanessa and Fernando. You know how it is in a city this size? Word gets around. Fernando's consulting business never took off. Turns out when you get fired for screwing your subordinate and misusing company funds, other companies aren't exactly lining up to hire you. Donna had taken him for everything in their divorce. The house, the cars, most of the savings. He'd moved into a small apartment across town, the kind with thin walls and parking lots full of dented sedans. Last I heard, he was working as a freelance marketing consultant, scrambling for clients and charging half what he used to make. Karma's a beautiful thing. Vanessa was still at the marketing company, but in a junior role making half her previous salary. The kind of position she'd started in 8 years ago before working her way up. She'd moved into a studio apartment, struggling to make rent on what she brought home now. Her mother barely spoke to her. Lorna had called me once, about 2 months after the final hearing, apologizing for trying to defend Vanessa. I didn't know about the money, she'd said, her voice tight with shame. I didn't know she'd been planning to leave you all along. Vanessa had lost friends, lost respect, lost her family. I should have felt bad for her. Maybe a better man would have. But every time I looked at Clarice, happy and stable and thriving, I remembered what Vanessa had been willing to sacrifice for her affair. I remembered the lies, the manipulation, the cold calculation of moving money and planning her escape while still sleeping in our bed every night. She'd wanted to destroy our family on her terms. Instead, I'd destroyed her plans and built something better from the ashes. One evening, while I was tucking Clarice into bed, she looked up at me with those big eyes. Daddy, are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Yes, sweetheart, I really am. Good. She hugged me tight. You deserve to be happy. I kissed her forehead, turned off the light, and walked downstairs. I poured myself a bourbon, a good one, not the cheap stuff I used to drink, and sat on the back porch, looking at the stars. It was a clear night, the kind where you could actually see constellations despite the city lights. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa, probably asking to change the visitation schedule again. She did that sometimes, claiming she had conflicts or asking for extra time. I deleted it without reading. That part of my life was over. The anger, the pain, the betrayal. I'd processed it all, weaponized it, and used it to protect what mattered most. Now I was just a father raising his daughter, building a new relationship with Misty, living a good life. Vanessa was somewhere across town, living with the consequences of her choices. Fernando was scrambling to rebuild a career he'd destroyed for an affair. They'd both learned the same lesson. When you betray someone who loves you, when you lie and steal and manipulate, sometimes the universe makes sure you pay for every single transgression. And me? I was the one who'd made sure the universe followed through. I finished my bourbon, smiled, and went back inside to the life I'd fought for. Justice wasn't just served, it was savored. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.